When I made a video where I explored how you could show for yourself that the Earth isn't flat, I started thinking about fundamentalism. I would like to understand them, though not in an outreach kind of way. On some level I find them fascinating. I like to use as an example a very small but vocal part of Christian fundamentalists who take the Bible verses about the world's four corners literally and thus believe that the Earth is flat. This could be called a strawman model for fundamentalists in general, but in order to illustrate and understand something, it's usually done most efficiently by looking at an extreme. While more moderate theists usually mention faith as a reason for believing, fundamentalists try to rationalize their beliefs. The thing they believe in has a physical aspect, such as a God that has interacted heavily with the world at a large scale several times in the last 6,000 years. Now, if you want to continue believing in such things, you will eventually run into trouble with scientific results. For the flat earthers, this happens pretty fast. So you got to explain to yourself and to others how so many people can expose a false idea. Therefore, fundamentalists often explain this by the use of conspiracy theories. The claim is that scientists and other relevant people are conspiring to convince other people that the Earth is round more than 6,000 years or that life on Earth has evolved. A conspiracy is a secret cooperation for a purpose which in general is sinister. Often the general public must be misled. There are, however, instances where something will behave like there's a conspiracy while it isn't. Let's take a look at such pseudo-conspiracies first to see if this can fit the bill of the fundamentalist reasoning. Here's a predator-prey simulation where it seems that the prey cooperates by moving in swarms in order to avoid the predators. That's however not the case. Each prey is simply programmed to steer away from the nearest predator. The program is something I made myself. The reason that you get the swarms is that the nearby prey sees the same thing and reacts similarly. Such a model can explain how politicians agree that the system works fine or that rich people tend to say it's important to lower taxes. They don't need to communicate secretly amongst themselves in order to agree on this, but the thing scientists react to is physical evidence, which is what's steering the scientific development. So unless the evidence itself is conspiring against the truth, I'll come back to this, a large and varying population can't all lie, and certainly not in the same way. If you add mass suggestion to the mix, you can shout something and make a population repeat it. But for that to have any long-term effects, you need an uncritical climate of fear. As an explanation for why Christians tell the same things, this works fine. Scientists aren't immune to suggestion, as can be seen in the cold fusion and N-ray cases, but these fads didn't last long in a critical environment. So if you're a fundamentalist and want to explain away scientific results, pseudo-conspiracies won't do. However, real conspiracies do not scale too well. In a climate of extreme fear and obedience, you can possibly manage something like the Reichstag's fire in Nazi Germany. In a more open environment, you can manage something like the Kuwaiti nurse, really a daughter of the Kuwaiti Washington ambassador, who told about Iraqi soldiers supposedly killing newborn babies before the US entered the first Gulf War. You don't need many people in the loop to pull off this kind of stunt, though. To understand how weak conspiracies are, you need only to look at the failure of the current Bush Jr.'s administration to plant evidence of mass destruction in Iraq after the invasion. It would have helped them greatly, but they didn't dare try it. In order for the Earth to be flat, you need a massive conspiracy among scientists, map makers, boat captains, and aviation industry. Clearly this is a highly unlikely scenario, but so is a mass conspiracy amongst the smaller class of astronomers, geophysicists, and biologists needed in a young Earth scenario. Of course, these arguments against conspiracies and pseudo-conspiracies do not impress many fundamentalists. Those that do find a large conspiracy hard to explain often go one step further. The claim is that Satan is steering the development of science, so he's controlling the scientists and coordinate the efforts. Note that one needs to adjust Christianity quite a lot in order to make this addition. If the devil can make flesh puppets of a large population, maybe even all non-believers, this makes him extremely powerful. Indeed, it would be hard to understand why the devil isn't in full control of the world now and humanity or Christianity exterminated or the Christians driven underground. Even if something is unlikely, it's still accepted as long as it's confirmed the fundamentalist preconceptions. But even if scientists are really lying, you can find things out for yourself. Sure, if you got a conspiracy theory about the standard model in quantum field theory, it can be pretty hard to gather evidence of your own. But the scientific results that the fundamentalists abhor are quite a bit easier to study for yourself. As you saw in the previous clip, it's a few hours work to find evidence for the Earth not being flat. Actually, I found out that I've experienced another independent evidence for the non-flatness of Earth. I made a trip from Oslo, Norway to Vancouver, Canada. I started in the middle of the night. The flight took about 12 hours, and when I landed, it was night in Vancouver. This would not have been possible with a flat Earth. 12 hours after the middle of the night, it must necessarily be day all over the world in that scenario. So there's at least two tests you can do if you really wonder about the shape of the world and distrust everyone else. So how can there be flat earthers? Maybe they simply like to shock people, but then what about young Earth creationists? Finding physical evidence for the age of the Earth or for basic evolutionary theory is a bit more tricky, but if you really wonder, it's possible. There's the fact that life is ordered hierarchically. You've got species that look quite a lot like other species to the point where they can crossbreed, like lions and tigers for instance. Then there's families of species that can be grouped again into orders of species that look a lot like each other, and so on. This is to be expected from evolution, but would be a rather surprising aspect of a creator. Some fundamentalists will go to extremes in order to view themselves as rational. If scientists lie and physical evidence lie, even when it's gathered independently, then a larger conspiracy must be afoot. Satan must have planted physical evidence so that independent data will point in the wrong direction. This view is weirder than it seems, as the original theist view was that the devil is a minor power that affects people individually by temptation. Such a physically active devil with such enormous power is a radical change of the whole doctrine in order to save other portions of the doctrine that most people will find less important. An even weirder rationalization is that God has planted the false physical evidence in order to test our faith. Such a trickster God is a complete monstrosity, a God that lies to us via nature so that unnecessarily many will go to hell for eternity, should not be worthy of worship, but still, some fundamentalists do hold this position. Against a belief in a trickster god or a supercharged devil, there's no hope of reaching through. Any physical evidence will simply be explained away by these extra additions to the faith. But these extra conditions can only be described as a priori extremely implausible. Fundamentalists seem unwilling to relate to physical evidence and reasoning under uncertainty, but that can be said for many people. It seems to me that the fundamentalist efforts are not so much to preserve their faith as to defend one particular notion that they put much prestige in. Okay, this exercise was a bit frustrating, but I've managed to present my views on the subject as far as they go, and hopefully someone may leave some comments that can give me further insights.